Here we go again.
No, not again.
You've been fooled.
How long have we been doing this?
Once more unto the
Again, until we're both dead.
Hello and welcome to You've Seen It Before, movie reviews and connections in mind. Well folks, the wait is over. Star Wars The Last Jedi, directed by Rian Johnson, is now in theaters, and the plot follows almost in the immediate days after the events of the previous film, The Force Awakens, in which Rey has found Jedi Master Luke Skywalker and hopes to learn the ways of the Force from him. And the Resistance, led by General Organa, Carrie Fisher, is now in hot pursuit by the First Order, namely Kylo Ren and General Hux, under the direction of Supreme Leader Snoke, after the destruction of Starkiller Base. And under pursuit from the First Order, it is up to Finn to find help, and for Poe Dameron to convince the Resistance leadership to flee and fight. Now, I'm going to do a spoiler-free first impression for you, for those who have not seen Star Wars The Last Jedi yet. There will be spoiler analysis after that. So let's get into some spoiler-free discussion first. I would say this is definitely a good film. I purposely avoided any and all promotional material after the first teaser was released because I wanted to experience the movie firsthand. I wanted to be surprised at things that happened in the film, and I was actually surprised. This movie takes characters and does things that I did not expect. It subverts expectations a lot, and we'll get into some specifics later, but there's some definite things that are very intriguing, and there were some things that will definitely divide audiences everywhere, and it already is dividing audiences everywhere. You kind of want to go on one side or the other. There really isn't a middle ground on that, but overall, I would say it is an enjoyable film. I will definitely go see it again, but there were some things that did bother me. Some of the writing decisions, some of the things that the characters are forced into and have to go I didn't feel were necessary to the plot at all. And overall, the tone. This is also, while does go into some darker directions, it is actually, there's a lot of humor and a lot of jokes in this film. And some of them land, but I feel like a lot of them were very forced, and it was kind of jarring to keep having that over and over and over again. And I would say that if I would compare this mainly to Thor Ragnarok recently, which also had a lot of humor, and if that style of of those sorts of humor beats over and over again were jarring to you, it may be jarring to you again in this film, but overall I would say definitely enjoy it, but go into that knowing that there will be some things that are annoying or might not sit right with you. So those are my spoiler-free impressions. Now, from this point on, I will say there will be spoilers of Star Wars The Last Jedi, as well as certain other films and TV series. There will be a full description below. And, like I said, there will be spoilers, so if you've not seen The Last Jedi yet, please stop the video at this point and come back later. You've got my first impression. You should go see it, and then come back and finish this video. But with these things in mind, though, let's get into some spoilers. So, one of the main criticisms of Star Wars The Force Awakens was that it was essentially a beat-for-beat remake of Episode 4 A New Hope. And it really was, and whether that helped or hurt the film is still up for debate. It's still an enjoyable film. And this film, while it is not a beat-for-beat remake of Empire Strikes Back, as many people would fear it might be, based on what happened with Force Awakens, there are definite callbacks in plot tones to Empire Strikes Back, as well as Return of the Jedi. Obviously, while instead of at the beginning, it's at the end, there is battle scene between the Rebellion and the First Order, in which the First Order has walkers headed towards a base in a mountain, and the Rebellion has to send speeders out to face them, and that is very much like the Battle of Hoth from Empire Strikes Back. And overall, this film is about the First Order chasing the Rebellion across the galaxy, very much like Empire Strikes Back, and this film definitely shows that tone as well. Also, there's an interesting callback to Return of the Jedi, in that when Rey is brought before Supreme Leader Snoke, aboard Snoke's vessel, he can look out onto the the Resistance ships that are being bombarded by the First Order, and he is giving essentially a running commentary and taunting Rey and saying, "Your fleet is lost, and you should join the dark side." Very, very similar to Return of the Jedi, in which the Emperor is goading Luke into striking him down with saying the Rebel fleet is lost. And yeah, there's some interesting. That's one element that evokes the Return of the Jedi there. Also, another parallel in that scene with Leader Snoke, after he dies, the Rey and Ben Solo, Kylo Ren, have to essentially team up to defeat the Praetorian Guard that's in this throne room. And this sort of this dynamic of the enemies teaming up to defeat these bad guys, it's not unique. In fact, it reminded me of a scene from the end of Wrath of the Titans, when Zeus and Hades essentially recognize a common enemy and team up to defeat the minions of Cronus. Also, there's a point in the film where Luke is facing down the AT-ATs of the First Order, and Kylo Ren orders all of these walkers to fire on Luke, who is all but defenseless on this planet, and all these walkers do end up opening fire on him. And when the smoke clears, he's able to he's still standing and surviving. That kind of reminded me of a similar scene in Marvel's The Avengers, where the Hulk is cornered by a bunch of Chitauri fighters, and they all open fire on a humongous barrage on the Hulk, and he's able to survive that as well. So that was a parallel, at least visually, on that front. One of the things that was really interesting to me, plot-wise, was that one of the main story threads of the Last Jedi is that the Resistance is now essentially on the run, all in this one cruiser, and they're they're accelerating faster than the First Order Star Destroyers that are behind them. But these Star Destroyers are still bombarding the Resistance ship, and the Resistance can only hold out as long as their fuel holds out, which is a limited amount of time. So they send Finn and Rose to go, or at least Poe Dameron sends Finn and Rose to go to this planet to fetch away, so that the First Order can't track them, and then they can escape from this situation. This reminded me a lot of very similar beats in two different series of Stargate, mainly SG-1 and Atlantis, in which you're either a starship or Stargate Command or Atlantis is being bombarded by an enemy, and in such a way where they have a certain amount of time, more than like a few minutes, several hours, and they have to essentially figure out a solution in order to defeat that enemy, and they have to send someone elsewhere to go find help and get there and get back. Finally, there's an interesting visual comparison to be made with the scene in which Rey goes into the dark side tunnel on Luke's island, and she's searching for the identity of her parents. And when she gets down this hole, she finds it's a very weird visual scene in which there are multiple copies of her, essentially like a mirror, and she's able to like mirror her emotions all the way down the line, snap her fingers all the way down the line, and this sort of reminded me of a scene from the YA movie Divergent, in which the main character Triss has to go through testing, and at one point she's in this room, this virtual room with all the mirrors around her, and she's essentially like figuring out her own reflection, staring at herself, looking inside herself for answers. Similar story beat there, similar visual style there. I just thought that was interesting. Yeah, there was an interesting parallel there. So those are the main points of parallel that I found with Star Wars The Last Jedi. There may be others that I haven't missed, that I missed, or so let me know in the comments below. Now for some spoiler analysis on this film that I couldn't talk about earlier. I would say the one thing, there were a couple things, so let me clarify clarify my position. I would say, when I say I recommend this movie, you should go see it, the highs of this film are very high. Like, the Rey and Kylo Ren team-up battle scene, was phenomenal. I thought that they worked well with establishing Rey's connection to Ben and Ben to Rey throughout leading up to that scene, and they're forming a bond. And so when they teamed up, I thought that was stellar. And the battle scene itself, I mean, come on, that was awesome in all the right ways. And I would also like, it is still cool to see a Hoth type battle, and they still go like shot for shot on certain angles and instances setup wise. So that was always fun. And honestly, the best, there was some great character arcs throughout this film. I mean, mainly Kylo Ren and Rey, they have a great character arc. Poe Dameron, his character arc was also very interesting, and it was cool to see him sort of humbled by the end, and I'd like to see that. And, I mean, by far, Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker, that was just a thrill to see him like this. And, of course, the best part is he actually talked. You actually got to hear him say words in this film, unlike in Force Awakens, so that was great. And also, this film handled Carrie Fisher very well. It's sad to see her gone. It'll be very interesting to see where they take her character, how they deal with her role gracefully and write her out in Episode 9, because originally her role was supposed to be even bigger in Episode 9, and now they don't have that option. So that'll be interesting to see there. But as far as the highs being very high, the low points are numerous enough that I can say that it's sort of holding me back to say that this is the best Star Wars film I've ever seen. It's not. It's definitely one that it was interesting for me to see that instead of a Star Wars film where I go to see and by the end I'm like, woohoo, yes! This is one where by the end I'm like, huh, okay. Whether that's a good or bad thing, I'm not entirely certain. I think it's interesting that it's definitely a conversation piece for people. But I mean, some of the lows, the whole Finn-Rose storyline felt very tacked on. It felt incredibly pointless. Their chemistry was very obviously manufactured and artificial. It did not work. And I honestly just didn't care that much. And I thought it would have been nice to have Finn go out in a blaze of glory at the end and have him saved at the last moment. It's cool to have Finn around for Episode 9, but I thought that this film would have had the guts to kill off a new main character in such a manner, but then I felt it kind of chickened out at the last second, and I felt like it was sort of lacking for that. Also, this is a minor point in the grand scheme of things, but it's just a bone of contention I have. The Porgs. The Porgs are those little, like, puffin bird-like chicken creatures on Luke's island, and really, they're only there for one joke on the island with Chewbacca about to eat one of them, and that's it. And really, the only reason they're there is to sell plush toys. That's really their only purpose. And even Jar Jar served a narrative purpose. For how stupid it was, he served a narrative purpose. These served no narrative purpose whatsoever. They were completely useless. I hated every moment they were on screen, except for that one joke, which was really funny. But yeah, no, just say no to the porgs. I'm sorry, but like I said, that's a fairly minor point. But overall, and honestly, the other scene that kind of didn't sit quite right with me was Leia's force retrieval back to the ship and how she survived the vacuum of space, even though it seemed she was unconscious. I mean, on the one hand, it's cool to see the force do new things, but on the other hand, that was the one in the category of things that we've not seen people who use the Force do in Star Wars. I thought the example of Luke being able to project himself across the galaxy and to face Kylo Ren was way cooler and way more earned than Leia being able to force pull herself through space to that, and that was just like, alright, whatever. So, yeah, I don't know about that. If you feel differently, that's okay. Let me know in the comments below. So, there you have it. That's my main review for Star Wars The Last Jedi. I'm still sort of processing it. I may have to take a second screening in order to fully nail down my feelings on everything. Let me know if you disagree or agree with any of my analysis or want to point something out that I missed. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate whatever audience I can get. Be sure I'm hoping to get a review in of Darkest Hour with Gary Oldman sometime next week, and hopefully do a year in review video before the end of the year. So, thank you all for watching, and just remember, there's nothing new under the sun, and yes, you have seen it before.